Hey folks, hey, Brad Miller with you today. We're going to be taking a trip down a little river, and we're going to have you come with us today. And we're going to start out right out with showing my brother Bruce, just standing, limbering up a little bit, getting ready to do a bunch of fly casting on the way down the river. And this is kind of rare for us because rarely do we get out of the canoe and actually fly cast. And the only reason we did this was because we're just taking a little break. But you can see how he forms such a tight loop as he goes back and then snaps that in there. You'll also notice that the kind of loop that he's throwing kind of almost unrolls as he'll get a nice tight loop on top, and then he'll lay it in there. Many times you have to employ a sidearm type technique to make sure that you keep the fly rod low in the water. But it really behooves you to sit down in your lawn in a chair and practice fly casting both directions in your lawn before you actually get in the canoe and head downriver. Now, it also helps to have a little chair strapped on to the front there. It's just very comfortable to have that available in the canoe. You can see there's a kind of a pack there in the back. In that pack, I always keep the life preservers and throwable seat cushion in there. You've got to have that in our particular area in Minnesota, and we rarely, if ever, get checked by a conservation officer on these small rivers, but you got to have the stuff with you nonetheless. Some of the other gear that's not used a lot is either tied on or laced into various parts of the canoe, so if we did happen to tip, we'd get the stuff back. You'll notice that big tree right there. That's the kind of cover you want to key in on. On this river, it was shade, but in and around some of those trees, especially tree trunks that are right on the edge of the waters, they have a tendency to dig out, and they'll create a little hole in there, and many times the fish will sit in there, and it's just a fantastic spot to target. And the main reason is because it's almost always shaded to a certain extent. And on a lot of these small rivers, especially when they clear in the summertime, you're going to want to concentrate, number one, first and foremost, on shade. And depending on what time of day you're on the river, etc., that's always going to vary. But these little spots of shade don't have to be very big, but you can really target those, any kind of overhanging cover, anything that offers the fish some sort of overhead protection. And not only, and one of the main reasons for that, I should say, is because of birds of prey. There's eagles, ospreys, and herons and so forth that ply these waters, and the fish, I think, know that either they stay under cover or they ultimately get eaten by something. You're going to notice a lot of these rivers are small enough where you can actually hit either side, and he's going to throw one way, and then he's going to come back here and he's going to throw another way. And I'm using this clip to show that it's not very uncommon to get hung up in a bush or a tree. I mean, your goal is to try to almost hit that bank, or even sometimes sidearm that fly underneath the cover. And many times, you're gonna get hung up. So if you take it very easy with this and let that fly kind of settle before you try to snap it. Now he's got that in the tree. He's going to give it a shot right here. And most of the time, I'd say 75% of the time, it's going to come right out. You're going to see here in a second here, he's going to put it into another one, probably with a back cast or something like that. And and many times as well, you will get hung up for keeps. And in which case, you either got to paddle back upriver and carefully extract that fly from the entanglement, or just give it a good pull and snap it off of there, depending on your situation. If you're going through some rough water, you haven't got time to turn around, you got to pull that thing out of there. But you can see how he is now turning and casting the other way to the other bank. And what I've done here with the canoe is position the canoe a little bit more at a 45-degree angle to the bank, and that gives him a little bit better opportunity to get hung up in the tree behind him. Now, in this case, he's going to be the impatient fisherman and just pull that baby out of there and snap it out of there. And the tree won that round. But so you always got to make sure you got plenty of tapered leader and all that kind of fly fishing peripheral equipment that you would typically use. This river is just a beautiful example of a late season where the water's low. We were lucky to get down this thing. There was a lot of emergent weeds in the upper section. A few areas we had to get out and haul the canoe over some rocks and some rapids and stuff like that, but that's part of the game, especially when you get into later summer periods and the waters drop. Good news is many times the fish are concentrated because there's not as much holding water. And as long as the fish don't leave the water system and head for the major river, which they don't in many cases, fishing should be pretty good. You'll notice too a couple other things about the canoe setup is that we've got just some basic stuff in here. We just got a cooler with some stuff in here. Always bring along plenty of water, obviously, maybe something to eat. And you'll notice on the left, if you can see it, just left the cooler, there's actually 2 fly rods that are tucked in the side there. And when you do that, you want to make sure that you put a piece of duct tape underneath the seat on the front and the back of the canoe where the tips of those rods are going to sit, because a lot of times there's a little crevice in there and you get your rod tip stuck in there, and it's doesn't have a happy ending when that happens. So make sure you check out the bottom of the canoe or wherever you're going to be putting these. And everything else you probably want to kind of batten down just in case you hit some rough water, maybe tip or something like that. Now, that's a really good example there of a spot that you definitely want to hit. There's some very nice overhead cover there, probably 20-30 feet along the shoreline, a nice overhead cover that comes quite a ways out. And then there's even a dark slot. Many times you'll find that on the deeper side of the river. And there's generally going to be fish laying in there. Now, they're not all going to hit, obviously, every day. And what we found out on this particular 2-day trip was that the mood of the fish seemed to change every couple hours, every hour even almost. We would start to hit a couple fish, say, on a popper, and then all of a sudden you wouldn't get a bite. If we don't get bites in about 10 minutes on a fly, we'll switch. We don't give them very much time, and we're not trying to force feed these fish. And you shouldn't either. Switch early and often and keep trying different things, especially if they're moving. You'll see these fish mound up behind the fly, sometimes wake towards it. If they don't hit, switch immediately because they're refusing it, basically. They're coming up on it and they're refusing it. So you need to keep changing. We typically, if they don't like the poppers, just make sure that that you keep changing until you find what they want. We went from poppers to hopper patterns, different types of hopper patterns. We went to some sliders. We went to some gurglers, and they all would hit those different flies at different times of the day. And towards the end of this day, for example, they went back on poppers for about the last 2 hours, and it was a blast, but they wouldn't hit them for the balance of the day. So always keep switching until you find out what those fish are going to want. But the main aspect and the thing to remember most of all is really sharpen up your casting. Your ability to be able to put that fly right up along the bank, be able to slide it underneath cover, be able to hit those targets is going to boost your hit rate immensely. You're going to outfish the guy next to you, for example, that can't hit those 10 to 1 if you can just consistently get that fly in there. So really work on your casting. I always tell people that's really the key to fly fishing, is to try to get that fly in there. So this has been kind of jam-packed with a lot of information, and we hope that you enjoyed this little cruise down this gorgeous little river in north central Minnesota as much as we did. And this was the first part of August 2015, and man, we just had a blast. It's just a beautiful place to be. If you haven't tried fly fishing out of a canoe, everybody's got access to one. Get a buddy that's pretty good with a paddle, and we switch about every hour or so, and it's a wonderful way to experience the outdoors. For Brad Miller and flybass.com, hey, thanks for watching. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.